Village Medical Daycare. Good morning, Dr. Bagat. How are you?
Good morning, Bantle. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's good to talking to you. Can you hear that last
Indeed.
part? Did you hear that last part? What I was
Sorry?
saying, did you understand what I meant when I said Motsatin Lahumpieko?
Yes, indeed.
All right, welcome and kindly go through it. I know today we're talking about
We're
salt.
talking about salt.
Yes. What is salt?
We're last in the series of the things we add to our food. We talked about fat and we talked about sugar and got lots of messages to say, you know what, I can't live without sugar. And today we're going to talk about something that everybody also feels they can't live without. And unfortunately, our nation is addicted to it. It's something that historically, in history, people paid a lot of money for it. And the word is salt. And people used to, carry salt across deserts to different countries because it was so valuable. You could actually trade salt for gold. That's how important it was. And unfortunately, now in our in the 21st century, we're just consuming too much of it. And we want to talk about today what is it. And so let's dive into the world of salt, discussing perhaps some of the benefits, some of the drawbacks, and maybe clearing up some of the misconceptions around it. So the first thing that I want to say is because people say, is salt important for our health? And the answer is absolutely. Salt, or the chemical name is sodium chloride. It's an essential mineral that we need it for proper nerves function, muscle function, blood pressure regulation, fluid balance. It's a really important, vital role in our body processes. However, many things result in balance. But before I go into it, how many of you or your family actually reach for the salt container before even tasting the food?
Before even tasting the food, I always fail to understand how people go about doing that.
Yeah, you see it, and it's crazy. I mean, you think, Kanta, you haven't even tasted this stuff, and so Botswana are addicted to salt. And how much should we consume daily? Well, the World Health Organization recommends a maximum of 5 grams of salt a day. This basically is a teaspoon of salt. And unfortunately, many people unknowingly exceed this limit due to not necessarily the salt that adds to the food, but in so much of the processed foods that are being consumed that contain high amounts of sodium. I'm talking about bread, I'm talking about palachi, I'm talking about baked beans, I'm talking about crackers and crisps and mafresh and everything you can think about. Some of the cereals on the market, cornflakes, Weetabix, oats, bran, muesli, granola, all of these things contain salt. A favorite poison is pizza. It's got huge quantities of salt, not only added, but in the salt that is in the cheese. If you had cheese without salt, you wouldn't like the taste of cheese. So that's really important issues. And somebody has already asked, Chen, I was not going to answer, but I'll answer. Naka, is all salt the same? While sodium content is similar across different types of salt, there are different types of salt. There's sea salt, there's pink Himalayan salt, there are herbal salts. And besides sodium, they contain other things like herbs and other minerals. And they contain a little bit less salt than you'd imagine. But some of the myths around salt that we need to bust is should I eliminate salt completely for good health? The answer is no, you need salt. Somebody's asked you, is sea salt less sodium than table salt? The answer is no, they're about the same. Somebody's also said, I usually don't salt my food, so I don't eat too much sodium. That's not true. Remember what I've said. A lot of the salt is hidden in some of the foods that you buy from the supermarket. And somebody said, kind of the problem is, what has he said? Low sodium or low salt has no taste. That's not true. You can actually use lots of substitutes. Do you use salt substitutes in your food when you're cooking?
No.
Yeah, there are lots of things. There's vinegar, there's herbs and spices, there's rosemary, there's thyme, there's pepper, there's, all sorts of things, chilies. They can actually make up for the salt that you put in there. And one needs to understand that, we go up addicted to this stuff. So let's address some of these things. Does salt cause high blood pressure in everyone? Excessive salt can contribute to high blood pressure in almost everybody, not 100%. It does almost affect everybody, some more than others. So it's really important to understand the reason why doctors say, askajal because the problem is when we add salt and we add a lot of it, it causes water retention. When that water is retained, it raises the volume in your body, and as a result, the blood pressure goes up. Somebody's asked here, is table salt as bad as sea salt? We've talked about this. It's a misconception. Table salt and sea salt contain approximately the same amount of salt, so you're not getting away by something being labeled as sea salt. Somebody's asked here, okay, so you talked about cutting salt. How can I reduce my salt intake without compromising taste? I'm a foodie and I like my food, but often I can't do without salt in my food. Well, here are some of the tips we've talked about. I think the most important thing I can tell people is cook more meals at home. This allows you to control the added salt. When you're eating in a restaurant or a takeaway, you don't know how much salt has been added in the back of the kitchen. So, it's really important to try and cook and eat at home. Read the food labels carefully. Choose low sodium items. Read the back. And if the salt content is more than 5 grams, remember what I said, maximum WHO recommendation is 5 grams, which is one teaspoon of salt a day. And I'm sure you and I eat lots of that. I mean, biltong is a favorite, and we salt that meat. And as a result, we're just consuming huge quantities of salt. We do those tests at medical school. We'll get people to consume a packet of biltong and measure their blood pressure, and you'll see that it'll spike. So this is really important. You can enhance the flavor with herbs and spices. Explore the world of spices and herbs to add depth. And that's really important without relying on salt. And of course, the issue we talked about was canned things like canned beans and canned vegetables. Remove some of this by rinsing it out. So this is really important. Do you do any of those things?
Not really, no.
So I think, people need to understand out there in our population that, while salt is vital for balancing sugar levels and it's vital for communication and almost hydroelectric energy in the cells, we actually consume too much salt. Our ancestors didn't actually consume salt by adding it. They would find it in vegetables and in some of the meat they were consuming. So that's important. Somebody's asked here, how does salt affect weight? Bottom line, eating too much sodium or salt in the form of added salt causes weight gain. What it does is it causes water retention, and so you get fluid retention. As a result, you have weight gain. Somebody's asked here, what is one? That's an interesting question. What is a shocking fact about salt? Like I said at the beginning, one of the most interesting facts about salt is it used to be used as money. Salt is so valuable in like ancient Rome that soldiers were sometimes paid with it. In fact, the word salary, for your information, comes from the Latin word sal, which is salt. Did you know that? Yeah.
So today I'm here to learn, basically.
So when a soldier was doing a lousy job, his paycheck might be cut. In terms of, we used to say, there's an English phrase saying, not worth his salt, which basically means he wasn't doing a good job. So this is really important. So remember some of the things we talked about. Somebody's asked you, how do you flush salt out of your body? Very good question.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is to sweat, whether you're running or jogging or or skipping, or even if you have access to a sauna in the gym. You drink plenty of water and you go and exercise, you'll actually flush some of the salt away. So that's really important. Somebody's asked here, equally important question. What happens if you stop eating salt for a week? Sometimes you can get what is called salt loss or hyponatremia, which basically means low sodium. And in some situations, particularly since the heat wave we had last week, we've had particularly our elderly having low sodium levels. They get muscle cramp, they get nausea, they get vomiting, they get dizziness, and can result in shock and coma. But it's very unusual because we often eat way too much salt. We have a favorite question that comes every week. Doesn't matter what topic I talk about. I think it's the same guy or woman sending me the same message. Somebody's asked here, do bananas help with sodium? And the answer is no, not at all. Banana is high in sugar, but it has very little sodium in it, so that's important. So I want to stop there. Do you have any questions?
Not from me. Let's check if our listeners have.
Okay, we've got another question coming in here. Naka, tell me some of the negative health effects of salt other than blood pressure. Well, it can enlarge your muscles of the heart, causing heart failure. It can affect your kidneys and cause kidney disease. It can cause stroke. It can cause heart failure. It can cause kidney stones. The list goes on. So really, these things are important in terms of salt, and it's important to understand. Somebody's asked you, which organ is too much salt bad for? I think it's the heart and then the kidneys. So these are two important issues. So if you have a cardiac condition or kidney condition, be careful about the salt you take. Somebody's asked here, does salt clog the arteries? No, it doesn't clog the arteries, but it raises blood pressure. And as the blood pressure rises, that can actually make the arteries hard. So that's really important. Somebody's asked here, what are some baby facts about salt? I don't know what they mean by that. So I'm going to skip that. I don't know what that means. Somebody's asked, good question.
Yeah.
What fruits are high in salt or sodium? Well, sodium is found in apples and guavas and avocado and papaya and mangoes and pineapple and bananas. In most fruits contain sodium, not necessarily salt, but sodium.
Sodium, yes.
Celery, spinach, carrots, beetroots all contain large quantities of sodium, which is where you can get your salt from. So that's really important to understand. I've answered almost. Oh, here's another question that's coming here. Does yogurt contain salt? Yes, yogurt does contain salt, but really small amounts of salt in there. So that's important.
Okay.
Naka, you talked about hidden salts. Where are the hidden salts? We've talked about it already if you haven't been listening. It's canned soups, stews, barbecue sauces, this Worcester sauce or however you pronounce it, pasta sauces, gravies. So be careful. Some of the seasonings that we eat over Christmas that can really add problems. Somebody's asked you, how do you satisfy a salt craving without salt? We talked about this. This is herbs and spices and chilies and those sort of things that are important. Somebody's asked here, my wife craves salt all the time. What is the cause of this? It may actually be that she's sweating a lot. Depends on how old your wife is, whether she's going through the menopause, whether she's sweating a lot, whether she's gymming a lot. So you need to check all those things in case she's craving a lot of salt. So that's really important. Somebody's asked you, what can I eat instead of eating mafresh? Well, you can eat roasted chickpeas, you can have banana chips, you can have baked green peas chips, you can have baked apple chips, you can have lots of substitutes that we can give other than buying this mafresh, which actually is not good for the oil that they fry in and the salt that they add in there. I think we're running out of time. I'm going to ask
a quick one I wanted to ask you. You
Yes.
were saying we need to rinse off these canned products before we use them, so as for us to reduce the amount of salt that is in them.
I didn't catch the end of that question.
You were saying we should rinse. The one way to try and reduce the amount of salt in the canned products is for us to rinse them. What did I get you clearly there?
Yes, indeed. So say, for example, you've got a can of preserved veggies or beans that you're going to cook. Take the beans out, thoroughly wash them and rinse them because they're in brine. Wash it out and then cook those veggies or those beans before you actually eat them. So that's one way of doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be excited about the juice that comes with the baked beans.
That's fine. But with the baked beans, unfortunately, you can't wash them out. Otherwise,
that's what I thought.
No, that's difficult. The Heinz baked beans are loaded with salt, sugar, and the wrong type of oil. So unfortunately, baked beans that are ready to eat is a difficult one. But if you're actually buying canned vegetables for cooking, you can definitely do that. Somebody said, you talk about mafresh, but are potatoes healthy? Yes, potatoes are healthy, but you need to cook them right.
Cook them right, yes.
You've got fiber and lots of stuff, but don't cook them in salt and don't fry them. Bake them and roast them. That's really important for you.
All right.
One more question here is, why do I feel better after eating salt? Because salt is good on the tongue, just like fat and sugar. That's why mafresh tastes so good. It's got all the ingredients that you need. It's got the fat in there, it's got the oil in there, it's got the salt in there, and it's got the starch in there. So that's why you love to eat it. It tingles your taste buds, and that's why salt is addictive. And that's why it's difficult to actually come off it. So that's really important to understand. That's the issue. One more question here, which is very important. Is popcorn good for you? I often take a box of popcorn when I'm out at the cinema. No, it's not. You can have popcorn on its own. It is healthy. But the problem with popcorn in the cinema and elsewhere is it adds so much salt to it that you're actually eating more salt than popcorn. So, do it, make it at home in a microwave or whatever it is and add a very little bit amount of salt on it, and then it's healthy for you. So that's really important.
Okay, so I'll get an air fryer for my fresh for someone who cannot live without my fresh.
Exactly. Yeah. So whoever's listening out there that likes Bantle, get her an air fryer.
All right.
So next week, Monday is our last session for the year. We're going to be talking about some Christmas tips, some festive season tips. You know, a lot of people there are going to go out in the festive, get hangovers, you know, get unfortunately, you know, overloaded on some of the things we've talked about in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about detoxing and managing your Christmas and festive in the most healthy way. So that's next week, 10:30 on the Broken Body Scene.
Lala, very funny as a case and someone is saying, oh, but guys, why are you talking about food during Christmas season? I'm like, we're trying to say to you, eat right, Lala, eat right.
See you next week,
All
my
right.
bless.
Thank you. Have a good one.